ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, Monrovia and Banjul, 7 o'clock in Lagos and Cotonou. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Mali's Transitional Council approves a 5-year term for General Assimi Goïta, renewable several times without election. Guinean government reveals contents of new draft constitution for referendum.
The court is a good thing. It has always been part of our laws. It is important that there is a jurisdiction that is able to judge what determines what governs the country.
Senegalese President Diomaye Faye calls for global financial reforms to serve vulnerable countries. And reactions trailed internet restriction in Togo following late June national demonstrations.
TikTok is like our bread and butter. But why reduce our connection? If there is no TikTok, we don't post our articles. So it's like I'm unemployed.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Cole with Newslink.
We are glad that you are joining us. We begin in Mali, where the country's Transitional Council and its President, General Assimi Goïta, has been granted a 5-year term, renewable several times without election. He will now lead the country until 2030. This decision was approved following the adoption of the Director by the National Transitional Council on Thursday. A unanimous vote of 131 councillors made this possible after the Council of Ministers enacted this bill last June. Still, in Mali, the group supporting Islam and Muslims, JNIM, announced that it had blocked the towns of Kai and Nioro du Sahel in the west of the country. In audio messages, the jihadist group accused the residents of these towns of collaborating with the Malian army. The occurred though in a series of coordinated attacks last Tuesday by JNIM, an Al-Qaeda affiliate. 7 towns were simultaneously attacked. In response, the Malian army announced that it had neutralized more than 80 terrorists. In Togo, the government has announced a peaceful march to promote peace, social cohesion, and living together. The event is set for this Saturday, July 5, in Lomé. In this contest, people are denouncing the restriction of mobile internet access. Imo Edit completes the story.
Since the anti-government protests of June 26, 27 and 28 against foreign Assing-based government, citizens have been lamenting poor internet connectivity. The restriction of the internet is not without consequences for the daily lives of the population. Francisca Josie, who sells items online, has struggled to post her product since the demonstrations in June. According to her, internet access is restricted.
TikTok
is like our bread and butter. But why reduce our connection? If there is no TikTok, we don't post our articles. I sell books. So it's like I'm unemployed. So that has a lot of impact on me.
Just like Francisca, these few students we met in Lomé are also experiencing difficulties in accessing the internet to carry out their research.
At the moment, the research doesn't work well. They cut all the networks. Sometimes, the telegrams are used to make a group chat. Others, we send files. Others, they stopped everything. We are now in the middle of the Amazons. To download the simple course on the platform, it really penalizes us. Some geopolitical courses are videos to watch on YouTube. That's it. Since last week, we have no more social networks.
Meanwhile, this internet restriction since the anti-government protests a few days ago has been denounced by the Togolese Consumer League. Emmanuel Sogaji is an official of this group.
Freedom
of expression is a serious harm. It is also a serious harm to the economic activities of the consumers. I think we have wanted to draw the attention of the authorities so that they realize that in recent past,
authorities have been condemned by the court of the GIS because at the time they had cut the use of the internet in Portugal.
As the reminder calls to demonstrate against the government originated via social media, the protests of June 26, 27 and 28 in the capital Lomé left 7 dead and several injured, according to civil society organizations.
A report from Sylvie Ouedraogo in Lomé, voiced by Imo Edit. Let's take you to Guinea, where the contents of a new draft constitution have been revealed to the public. This text introduces several reforms, including the extension of the presidential term from 5 to 7 years, renewable once. It also provides for the creation of a Senate and a special court of justice of the Republic responsible for trying the head of state and ministers for high treason. Christopher Atichu has the details.
The content of the document were unveiled on national television earlier this week. The bill includes new features such as the extension of the presidential term from 5 to 7 years and the creation of a Senate. Ousmane Gawal Diallo, the Guinean government spokesperson, weighs in on term limits.
It does not create any doubt. As I said earlier, the constitution that is presented to us is the work of a collective will. So if the parliamentarians have agreed on this formulation, it is certainly the one that requires the most consensus possible to the people to speak out on it.
The new constitution also provides for the creation of a special court of justice of the Republic, an institution that will be responsible for trying the president and members of the government in case of high treason. In this regard, Ousmane Gawal Diallo says,
The court is a good thing. It has always been part of our laws. It is important that there is a jurisdiction that is able to judge what determines what governs the country, so that we do not remain in an institutional void, as has been the case at one point. So it is important because more and more the leaders must be questioned about their governance, and specialists must be brought together in an institution that can do the work.
In addition, this new constitution also provides for another benefit, such as universal health coverage, which will become a right for Guineans. Education will become compulsory until the age of 17. Meanwhile, the test will be submitted for a referendum on September 21, 2025.
Christopher Teacher with that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
For more political developments, let's travel to Nigeria, where a new opposition force is beginning to take shape. Prominent opposition figures are rallying under the banner of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, ahead of the 2027 general elections. The movement, led by former Senate President David Mark, has been described as a coalition for national rebirth. However, it is not without controversy, drawing mixed reactions from across the political spectrum. Usma Umar reports from Abuja.
The African Democratic Congress, ADC, has officially become the political platform for the newly unveiled National Coalition of Political Opposition Movement at a high-profile event in Abuja on Wednesday. The interim national chairman of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, and former Senate President David Mark declared the coalition's intentions to go beyond the quest for political power in 2027. Instead, he said the group seeks to restore Nigeria's democratic values and prevent the country's descent into a one-party state. The coalition's decision to adopt the ADC followed what Mark described as extensive consultations over several months. However, cracks are already beginning to show. There are growing concerns that the ADC is being hijacked by opposition politicians from other political parties who are more interested in wresting power from the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, than in building a viable ideological alternative. Despite this situation, political analyst and legal practitioner Liboros Oshomo said the development remains a good sign for democracy.
It is good that members of the opposition are coming together, because just long ago, all you hear was that the president was turning the country to a one-party state. It's really a welcome development. There's nothing new to it. Meanwhile, the coalition's unveiling saw an unprecedented convergence of Nigeria's political heavyweights, including former Vice President Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, Labour Party's 2023 presidential candidate Peter Obi, and his running mate Datti Baba Ahmed, and former Transportation Minister Rotimi Amechi. Also present were ex-governors, former ministers, party stalwarts, and civil society leaders. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Meanwhile, the 2023 presidential candidate of the opposition African Democratic Congress, Tumibi Kachiku, has rejected the recent takeover of the party by a coalition of opposition groups, describing it as hostile and illegal. Kachiku, in a press conference on Wednesday, dismissed the development as a dramedy, accusing the coalition leaders of entering into an alliance with what he described as the wrong leadership of the ADC. He said the move lacked legitimacy and would not stand. He also described the coalition members as a group of mostly geriatrics, allegedly seeking a platform to pursue their chopping must continue ambition. Let's hear from him.
It's with the greatest amusement that I watched the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar-led group announce their takeover of the national leadership of the African Democratic Congress. The facts of the matter are as follows. The Atiku-led group are in some form of alliance with the former leadership of the party led by Ralph Nwosu. The tenure of the Nwosu-led executive lapsed on August 21st, 2022, and his continued parade of himself as the chairman of the party was and is the subject of various litigations in different courts across the country. From the foregoing, I want to then pose the following questions. Can you build something on nothing? Can you shave a man's hair in his absence? Can you enter a man's house through the back door and declare yourself the landlord? These yesterday's men who represent a bad chapter in Nigeria's past have bought bad markets from a man who represents a bad chapter in ADC's past. Nigerians have watched in amazement as this group of mostly geriatrics shopped around for a party to prosecute their chopping must continue ambition. This further cements the opinion most hold that political parties in Nigeria stand for nothing and will fall for anything. These men, made up of a former vice president, former governors, ministers, and political office holders, are the same people who have presided over the affairs of this nation for the past 4 decades. We have absolutely nothing to show for their decades of leadership.
Tumibi Kachiku is the 2023 presidential candidate of the opposition African Democratic Congress in Nigeria. Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye has reaffirmed his cause for reform of the global financial system to serve vulnerable countries. He made this statement during one of his many speeches at the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, which took place from June 30 to July 3 in Seville, Spain. President Faye advocated for fairer global governance, fairer tax and debt rules, and financial tailoring to the needs of vulnerable countries. Let's hear more from Sankule Janko.
In his address to the high-level plenary session, Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye called for a comprehensive reform of global economic governance to correct systematic imbalances and enable more meaningful participation of developing countries in the Bretton Woods institutions. He underscored the urgency of reforming international taxation systems to combat tax evasion, enhance transparency, and ensure that taxes are paid where wealth is created. During a roundtable on investing in international solidarity, President Faye denounced the inadequate financing, debt, and rating rules that hinder developing countries from securing funding on favorable terms. He criticized one-sided debt conditions that compel countries to prioritize payment over essential services like health, education, and employment. In addition, Senegal's 5th president condemned the excessive use of veto power and the retreat of the United Nations from crisis resolution efforts. However, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye proposed the introduction of automatic debt suspension clauses in the event of economic or environmental shocks.
Sankule Janko reporting there. You are still listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Mali's Transitional Council approves a 5-year term for General Assimi Goïta, renewable several times without election. Guinean government reveals contents of new draft constitution for referendum. Senegalese President Diomaye Faye calls for global financial reforms to serve vulnerable countries. Reactions trailed internet restriction in Togo following late June national demonstrations. Still ahead, we have guest interview and a sports update. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We are streaming live on YouTube at WADR News and on Facebook, WADR English Service. We head to Ghana, where the much talked about 24-hour economy by President John Dramani Mahama was launched on Wednesday in Accra, promising to revamp and revitalize the nation's struggling economy. Speaking at the launch, Mahama touted the initiative as timely, aimed at economic growth, meeting consumer demands, and creating millions of jobs, particularly in the agricultural sector. This round-clock economic agenda was among Mahama's campaign points during the 2024 electoral season that ushered in his presidency. However, is Ghana ready and has the necessary structure to support the 24-hour economy system? Let's hear more from Abdullahi Hassan in this report.
Ghana, like other developing countries, has sectors that work around the clock, generating revenue and sustaining hundreds of thousands of households. Businesses such as those in tourism and hospitality, the creative arts, transport and agriculture, as well as health globally, benefit from the 24-hour economy, which is split into two halves. The evening economy is between 6 p.m. and 12 a.m., and the late night economy starts at midnight and ends at 6 a.m. when the morning rush hour begins. An economist, Dr. Patrick Asumin, explains its practicality in Ghana's context.
If you look at the content, the 8 pillars that the government has identified, it's not extremely new. I think it's just a different way of rethinking about how the government wants to take the economy. The idea of making agric a central piece of it is not something that is new. However, there are some important differences in terms of creating specific enclaves that it can use for agric.
The 24-hour economy, according to the presidency, will promote commercial competitiveness, consumer demand, and a government-induced enabling environment. On the flip side, research points to a possible linkage between long working hours and health problems resulting in cardiovascular, psychological, and stress issues. Amid the health and safety concerns, can Ghana's economic structure support this project? Dr. Patrick Asumin says,
I know the energy is extremely important, but things like the road infrastructure, the water, the broader infrastructure probably doesn't need as much electricity as the manufacturing process. But at the same time, you need to let the agric process start and generate enough local raw materials before you think about that. Because at the moment, we are not able to generate sufficient power. So anything that's power intensive, we are not ready to start.
Financial experts suggest establishing an independent commission under the Ministry of Employment and Labour to work with industries, attract public and private investment for the effectiveness of the 24-hour economy.
Abdullahi Hassan fight that report. Meanwhile, Ghana and India have signed a series of memoranda of understanding covering key areas such as health, trade, and culture. The agreements were signed as part of ongoing bilateral talks during the official visit of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Speaking at a joint press conference on Wednesday, President John Mahama announced that additional agreements have been finalized, including partnerships on vaccine manufacturing, the supply of agricultural machinery and equipment, as well as defense cooperation. As WADR Nadi reports, Modi's stopover in Accra is the first by an Indian leader to Ghana in the last 30 years and was therefore awarded a prestigious national honor of the land by President Mahama.
The recently signed Memoranda of Understanding MOUs between Ghana and India are designed to establish new frameworks for cooperation across key sectors including healthcare, culture, standards and institutional partnerships. Speaking at a joint press conference at the Jubilee House on Wednesday, July 2, President John Dramani Mahama announced that multiple MOUs had been concluded, including one establishing a permanent joint commission between the two countries, a mechanism aimed at deepening diplomatic engagement and fostering long-term collaboration.
The Memorandum of Understanding between the Institute of Traditional and Alternative Medicine and the University of Health and Allied Sciences in Ho, Ghana, and the Institute of Teaching and Research in Ayurveda, Ministry of Ayush, Government of India. We've also signed an MOU on cultural exchange between our two countries.
The President further revealed that additional agreements are currently being finalized.
Following consultations between our Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Indian High Commissioner, we also have requested the signing of MOUs on vaccine manufacture and production and an MOU on defense cooperation.
President Mahama noted that the visit comes at a crucial time as Ghana rolls out its reset agenda, adding that the country will leverage its relationship with like-minded partners such as India to achieve its national objectives. Addressing the press through an interpreter, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi pledged India's full support for Ghana's economic reset efforts with commitments to cooperation in sectors such as energy, mining, defense and security.
We will move forward following the mantra security through solidarity. We will increase our cooperation in areas such as the training of armed forces, maritime security, defense supplies and cybersecurity.
Discussions between the two leaders also covered regional security and global affairs, with both expressing concern over ongoing conflicts in West Asia and Europe. For WDR, Nadidi Teti, Accra.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, Nigerians are reacting to news of the African Democratic Congress forming a coalition with other political groups in the country. The move aimed at strengthening the party's position ahead of the next election has sparked mixed opinions across the country. Our guest is Emmanuel Ifa, a public affairs analyst.
Yes, I would say it's good because we are in a multi-party democracy where a variety of opinions is the key ingredient. So this is good for us because if we do not have such a situation, the tendency is that the party in power would feel arrogant and feel that it's all-knowing, and there will be no second opinion or alternative view or opinion. As you know, every coin has two sides. So I think it is good development for our country.
Well, do you see them unseating the ruling party in 2027?
Well, as to unseating or not, that I can't say, because it depends on how they are able to organize themselves properly. It depends on how they are able to organize themselves. They are able to sell themselves to the Nigerian public. If they do not allow their personal interests, because we know quite a number of them who are at the forefront of this coalition, we know individually how they have different interests. No one is ready to allow the other the tendency. So if they have such interests and they begin to pull from different directions, each of them wanting to be at the head, I don't see them going anywhere. But if they decide to pull themselves together, that is one, and agree on one, and ready to back one person and few others to lead, and are able to properly marshal their message in such a way that they penetrate the psyche of Nigerians. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. But there are hurdles, quite a number of hurdles they have to cross.
Very well. There have been also concerns that ADC isn't that a popular party Do you think perhaps if they had chosen Labour Party or PDP, they would have gotten that popularity and more support from the population?
Before the 2023 election, who knew of Labour? But Anobi came in and Labour became one of the parties to beat. So it's not impossible. Today, we are talking about ADC. ADC is on the lips of everyone. Sometimes the names, the kind of, now we have people who have known very well, and now they are blowing away. ADC had always been there for all this while. Nobody even cared to mention or remember its name. Today, it's a name being mentioned. So it's not so much about whether an old party or a party that has been existing. When APC came, quite a number of people who are in APC today, many of them were of the view that APC wouldn't go an inch. I recall very well the current Senate president who says an APC is an expired drug. It don't move anywhere. Today, they are all jumped. They are in APC and are singing hallelujah for APC. And so it's not really so much an issue to me. Today, we are talking about ADC. ADC that was relatively unknown some few days back. So the party is not so much the issue. Sometimes even the big name of the party is the liability. Because some have even suggested in the past that the name PDP may not even fly, will not be at home with most Nigerians. And so I don't see that as a problem.
Mr. Manuel, thank you so much for your time.
It's always a pleasure.
Emmanuel Ifa is or public affairs analyst. Now here comes Sankuli, the sportive Janko, with the latest in the world of sports. Sankuli, good evening.
Good evening, Augustine. And of course, on big news from the world of African football. And this time it's all about women, because the Confederation of African Football, CAF, has just unveiled a brand new trophy for the upcoming CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. This stunning new silverware isn't just a trophy, it's a bold symbol of how far women's football has come on the continent, inspired by the iconic main AFCON trophy. This new design celebrates quality, unity, excellence in the beautiful game. Elsewhere, Burkina Faso has received a timely boost ahead of the upcoming international fixtures, with the Confederation of African Football, CAF, officially reinstating the August 4 stadium in Ouagadougou for international competition. It means it has met the standards now. And finally, shocking reports from Spain after the news of Liverpool and Portugal forward Diego Jota's death in a car accident at the age of just 28. The incident occurred on the A52 motorway near Palacios de Sanabria, with the local media stating the vehicle caught fire, leaving no survivors. Jota's brother Andre, also in the car, died. It has been confirmed. The tragedy comes just days after Jota celebrated his wedding on June 22 and was vacationing ahead of the news.
That's a sad news for Portugal, for Liverpool, and for sports lovers.
For sports lovers, and for me, the sad thing is he just left behind a newly wedded wife with 3 kids. Can you imagine? They just celebrated their wedding. I mean, they were on a honeymoon period, one would say, because just 2 weeks ago that he married his childhood sweetheart, actually. Wow. And then the next thing you know, he's that. I mean, I was having a conversation with someone who said, but why didn't he use a plane? Well, actually, he was rushing up to get a boat to Santander in Spain. To go back to England. But the reason why he didn't use a plane is because he just had a long surgery. And according to doctors' advice, it was the doctors who advised him not to, use a plane because he's still recovering from the surgery. But then it's just tragic.
Yes.
Augustine. It is really, and it's very, very sad. Like you said, for all of football lovers, Diego Jota is a gentle, and he's a superstar.
Yeah.
And the latest news we have is that Liverpool, his current team, has decided to retire his number 20 jersey. And Wolverhampton, where he used to wear number 18 as well, they've also decided to retire his jersey. That means no one else will wear the jersey in honor of Diego Jota. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sankule Janko. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Falilu Sow and Umundan Yogo for the technical support. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR English, on Facebook, WADR English service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is WADR's Environment Program, Enviroscope, with Abdullahi Hassan. I am Augustine Curley. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio